Gravitics. This is my way of unifying the gravitational phenomena with electromagnetics. At these very low temperatures, the thermal problems, of course, are much less, and the subtleties of gravity are shown to be very small and actually very important for the states. For example, as we go through these titles here, we can just look briefly at what the titles are for the gravity time constant of 5 nanoseconds. We'll establish to unify electromagnetism, atomic orbitals, and gravity. And then we'll talk about laser population inversion, how the lifetimes of the population of states is affected by gravity, and then diamagnetism and gravity at 1 degree Kelvin, cryogenics, and Lenz's law is explained, and then finally we'll go to the state evolution of quantum effects by gravity. Cryogravitics, a new branch of science at very low temperatures involving the subtleties of gravity. And this is done by unifying the 3D electrons as they are paired with 4-dimensional protons. And then we'll talk about diamagnetism, laser beams, and superconductors. But first, as I said, this pairing of 3D electrons and 4D protons is best looked at with the geometry. So let's take a look at the basic dimensions I'm talking about. Here is the proton and electron. They're paired together. If they're not moving around, a free electron will be attracted through the 3 dimensions I call EX, EY, and HT. Now, if they are moving, there's a magnetic field, and the 3 dimensions are shown here. For the EY is a straight line of flux connecting an electron to 1 proton. And there's 3 dimensions. The HT is a time-like dimension going the other direction from EX and EY. Now, another way to show this is by using this picture here. Now, this one we could say is like the whole universe for 1 proton. And here you see the blue proton in the middle with the 4 dimensions. X, Y, and Z are these black spaces flowing into the proton. And time is flowing out from the proton radially in all directions. Now, the proton also connects through 2 red dimensions to the electron. It's not 3 space dimensions to the electron, only 2 space dimensions, and 1 counterflowing time-like dimension going the other way. And I have a third picture we can look at here. And this one has the almost the same type of thing going on here. And this one, we could say, has the red proton here with an electron connected through these 2 dimensions. And flowing the other way is this time-like dimension. So there's 3 dimensions between the electron and proton, but there's 4 dimensions between the proton and the universe. And so this X, Y, and Z are flowing into the proton, and time is flowing out of the proton. And the opposite, there's a mirror at the center of the proton. I call the mirror negative infinity. And the dimensions flow out, 1 to the neutron, 2 to the electron. And flowing in is the magnetime. So let's go back to the overview of what we're talking about here. Now, this gravity has a time constant of 5.12 nanoseconds. This is how long it takes for a proton or neutron to consume the adjacent space in the amount of its own volume. Now, this can be calculated for any planet or star, this 5 nanoseconds here. It's NV seconds divided by AZ, where N is the number of protons and neutrons in the star. V is the surface area of the star or planet. No, I mean, V is the volume of a proton. A is the surface area of the planet, like Earth, 200 million square miles for area. And Z is the distance fallen in 1 second, 4.9 meters. And that equation for the 5 nanosecond time constant is based on the momentum of free space equation, where the number of proton volumes divided by a time constant is equal to the volume of the fallen shell, AZ, in the 1 second test. So now let's move on to the laser population inversion. Using this formula, based on gravity, I've calculated that correctly the state lifetime for the laser erbium laser amplifier. 4.7 milliseconds is calculated by using Planck's constant divided by the 5 nanoseconds squared, and that is an amount of power coming from replenishment of Planck's constant. After a photon's emitted, that angular momentum of Planck's constant is depleted, so that you have to wait like 5 nanoseconds for gravity to replenish that. And here's the power. And now this laser beam has an energy of photons of 0.08 electron volts for the element erbium. And it has a Z of 68 protons. Now lifetime is equal to the power divided by energy multiplied by Z, and experiments show about the same time. So let's talk about diamagnetism. Now, this is a very weak magnetic force, for example, on hydrogen. And if you put a magnetic field around hydrogen, it'll precess at a certain speed. And my theory is that this is the non-crossing law. As I've already explained in an earlier nickel and iron video, Lenz's law is explained at any temperature. Diamagnetism occurs with the same strength regardless of temperature, just like gravity has the same strength regardless of temperature. Now let's look at Lenz's law in some more detail here. Now here's, for example, an NMR experiment. We're going to have hydrogen in here precessing under the influence of the external fields. You have a bar magnet on the left and a bar magnet on the right. Now, Lenz's law is caused by this non-crossing theory, that all the ring currents in the nickel or iron nucleus are going clockwise in this picture, and on the other bar, all the currents are going clockwise. Also, the ring currents are comprised of electrons that are also going clockwise. That's why there's the opposite current, because everything is spinning the same direction. I explained it in more detail in that other video. So let's just go back to this thing now. Superconductors are using a non-crossing law, and there's a contraflow belt going on. 2 dimensions in space, like a flat piece of paper or a belt. And the thing is, I have a nice little picture of this going on here. So here is, for example, in a copper conductor, each proton is paired with 1 electron. And as the electrons move around through the wire, they break this pairing and become repaired. And that makes ohms in resistance. Now, on the flat superconductor film, these flat 2-dimensional membranes go all the way around the circuit without breaking. So, for example, here, electron 5 is connected to proton 5, even though it's closer to proton 7. The pairing remains as it goes around, and with no difference in the pairing, there's no ohms. So let's just go back to this slide here. Now, also things are well understood in terms of the units of measure. On one of my websites here, which you can see in the links here, here's my websites. And on this, I have the periodic table of units of measure on some of these here. So that ohms are per second. The number of pairs broken per second is what ohm is. Now, also a Tesla has per second, which is lines of flux per second passing a place. And these are all deterministic pairings. Unlike in gravity, where there's 4 dimensions, in this 3-dimensional pairing, 2 space dimensions and 1 counterflowing time-like dimension, it's a deterministic pairing of which electron is paired with which proton. And this all fits together with the magnetic refrigeration type of progress done by demagnetization. That if you go to a low temperature like 0.3 degrees Kelvin and you remove the magnetic field, that frees up all the directions that the atoms can move in, because there's the non-crossing law does not have to be obeyed if there's no lines of flux going by and nothing blocking the atoms. They can be more free and go to a lower temperature. And now also this laser refrigeration by Doppler is something that some people say has a momentum process. I say no, it's a non-momentum process, refrigerating things in light rays and laser beams capturing things, because it's not momentum, it's a length of a velocity in a bond. And that length adds heat, and taking length away takes away heat. So let's just look at the final slide here, state evolution by gravity. And the ground state of an atom or molecule could be, say, at 1 degree or 5 degrees Kelvin or something. Now, the 0-point energy, however, has been noticed by chemists in reputable textbooks. You can see them talking about 0-point energy. And here I have proposed the calculation. The energy is the minimum that an atom could have is h bar divided by 5 nanoseconds, which is about 1 times 10 to the minus 7th electron volts per electron proton pair. That's about 100 or 1,000 times weaker of a photon than the cosmic microwave background radiation. Now, these gravitic phenomena are what used to be called relaxation and thermodynamic equilibrium being reestablished, because gravity is replenishing the wave functions and bonds that pass through the proton. Momentum is not in electromagnetism. Flux is used in electromagnetism. Momentum is only for inertia and gravity and those 4 dimensions. The other 4, EX, EY, EZ, and HT, don't have momentum. Electric fields don't have momentum. Photons don't. Atoms only have momentum as far as the mass goes. But they use flux, 3 dimensions. And if lines of flux cross, a new proton-electron pairing is established, and that is what we call ohm.